Welcome to Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show will have a talk about a Linux project, such as a Linux distribution, a desktop environment or application. We also chat about the community or any variety of topics from the community. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate, a Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the Open SUSE project. And with me today, I've got Colin, Ulfnick, Eris, Ben, Jinda, the return of Peter, and Swift. How is everybody?
Good.
Excellent.
Even busy.
No complaints.
That's good. And if you had some complaints, wait. People love complaints, right? Complaint department?
Yep, just send them
right.
to the complaint compartment.
That's
It's
right.
fine.
That's what we're there for.
Put them in the box.
Well, it's nice to see you, Peter.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited you're here. So I hope to hear your take on things. It'll be fun.
Yeah, okay, that's a good time to talk. Yeah.
It's a good time to talk.
Well, on the docket for today, we'll be talking about what have you been doing in Linux or tech. Sorry. We'll go over the StrawPoll. We'll do the open mic night. See what's on the menu for next week. Do some housekeeping. We got a community free pour. We'll be talking a little bit about StormOS and then close the sucker out. But first, what have you been doing in Linux and tech? Peter, since I haven't seen you in basically what seems like forever, or maybe a dog's age, or half a dog's age, I don't know. What have you been up to? I'll put you on the spot.
Okay, no problem. Keep him busy at the food bank, of course.
Yep.
Also have a volunteer job which handles Bible documents from other countries.
Okay.
Which is kind of confidential work, and I'll mention that for a reason. So Solus went dark for like 3 months. I had a couple of contacts. There was not a lot of updates.
Wait, hey,
Actually,
Peter. I screwed up. I already messed up in the show, and I apologized to Eris and when I saw the chat. Hey, make sure you do the straw poll, okay? All right. Sorry, Peter. I don't want to.
Come back to me.
No. All right. Now go ahead, Peter. That was it. I forgot that one little bit.
Okay, is it then? Okay. I'm out of touch with the show. I forget the order. So, reason I mentioned that confidentiality in that documents is that Solus went dark. There was no updates.
Yep.
A lot of people here have probably read what happened. They had DNS fail. The servers went down. At the same time, the team lead went ill, very ill, and it kind of fell apart. I had a couple of contacts I was talking to. They were hopeful to get it back, but they didn't know when. They were very honest with me. And because of the confidentiality of the documents I work with, I needed a secure system. I had no security updates for 3 months. So I made the switch on my main Filio system to PCLinuxOS, which I used on other machines anyway. So I was very familiar. I'm running KD on it. I'm very happy.
Oh, good.
And then Solus came back this week. They've got a brand new team together. There's a few familiar names back in the team, and they have updates. So I actually got security updates yesterday. They got a whole new structure. Things are looking good. Josh is back. They're working with Ike as well. The plan is eventually that Solus, the next version of Solus 5, would be based on SerpentOS. So a lot of things happening in that world.
Excellent.
So that's where I'm at. I installed Solus a couple of days ago on a laptop my wife gave me. She wasn't using and wasn't needing a Razer Blade 15 laptop from 2019. She gave it to me. So Solus is on there and it's working great.
That's really
So
good.
I'd love to have a chat about that because I used to like Solus. I went off Solus not for any reason, just because I was exploring other things. But so Josh is doing the Buddies of Budgie, and he's taking care of the Budgie desktop.
So he still runs Buddies of Budgie. He's working with a lot of other distros, Ultramarine, Arch, Fedora. He's working with a whole bunch of distros with Budgie. So That's his main task. But there's a whole new team on Solus, a whole bunch of guys actually, and some of them were developers from before who have kept on and are being utilized a lot more. And the security and the load have been spread. So it's no longer one person. If one person lost the keys, that we would not be stuck. So they've restructured. Ike came on board because he's hosting the server right now, but there's new server plans. So right now Solus is on the same server that Separate OS is on, which is still in development. So I say a lot going on there.
There really is.
Yeah.
I've been keeping really up with the news because at first it was a lot on Reddit. You know, people having different comments and different takes and their ideas, and I understand that. And my whole attitude was give it some more time and we'll see how things get done. And much to my surprise, that very week is when we got that news about the restructuring of the team and about plans for the future that were put out. And I'm really grateful for that, you know, because Solus right now is my favorite distribution to use, hands down. And I don't want to see it go away. So it's really nice to have that come back and be up and running. In fact, I'm running the CDN updates right now.
Yeah.
As we talk.
Yeah. They moved the repo to a CDN.
Mm-hmm.
And the Rochester Institute of Technology is going to be a backup mirror. Beforehand, it was a primary.
Mm-hmm.
So Swift, you've been on Solus throughout this whole time that all this has been happening,
Yes.
even with the lack of updates, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
I stayed on the whole time, and I'm glad I did. You know, I don't like changing distros.
Yeah.
Once I have something set up the way I want it, it's the way I want it.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't like messing with it. I just want to run the updates as possible. And that was, you know, annoying to me. It just wasn't as big an issue to me as someone that's doing this professionally or someone that's, you know, relying on certain things. So people have different uses, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But for me, it wasn't a big deal. I don't feel like it wasn't so bad for me.
Yeah, the only reason I actually did jump ship, and I did do that, and I admit to it, was because I needed security for the other work I do. I needed
Absolutely,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially if you're doing sensitive documents, like you said.
Yeah.
You've got to have up-to-date kernels and all that.
Exactly.
If they're not coming through, I understand that. It's fair enough.
That is a really that's a really good point. So I think one of the things that I know that Linux is kind of lacks in, and I've heard it discussed, and I've even had someone complain to me about it, you know, one-on-one, is doing full disk encryption is often a challenge. And I don't know about like with BTRFS so much, but I know like with some other file systems. Now I don't do full disk encryption. Yes, I'm a tinfoil hatter. I only encrypt parts of my disk, not the whole thing, for reasons. But I know that some organizations do require full disk encryption, which I think is mostly concerned for machines being taken, you know, like a lost machine, a stolen machine, or whatnot. Now, Adam, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding on why they use full disk encryption, especially on laptops, in case they're taken or things are stolen. Was that the case that you find?
I heard full disk encryption is good if you like at a cafe and Wi-Fi and stuff, so people can't access things.
Well, I know that helps with it. Yeah, I'm not sure that helps with the like disk encryption. I don't think it doesn't help if the machine is on. I think it's when the machine is off and trying to break into the machine, like, you know, pulling the drive out, whatever. Ultimately, encryption that's tied to the TPM module, I think, is probably the most robust right now. But my biggest concern always is if something in the encryption breaks. I have lost data by encryption breaking, but I don't know. So I guess I you know, it's part of a physical security measure, basically, is really what it boils down to. But anyway, so Peter, now obviously doing the most, you know, the latest kernels and so forth. How do you store the data? Have you tried KDE vaults for anything like that?
Actually, I say it's confidential. It's more confidential than it's not like bank details and such. It's more to protect people translating the Bible in different parts of the world, so that people don't know where we're working and things like that. Huh? But I don't use encryption. I just wanted a secure system. That's all. Huh?
That's good stuff. So is this keeping you pretty busy then? Would you say taking up a lot of time?
Oh yeah,
Or, yeah.
Yeah. I could talk for about an hour on my process. I actually use Tesseract OCR. They send me scans of the Bible from different languages from across the world, and it's printed Bibles that are no longer that are not digitized, and then we digitize them.
Oh,
so
wow.
they send me scans, and I use Tesseract to OCR that scan, turn it into text. And then take the text of each chapter and merge it together by cat, and then I code the text in a certain format that they want and send it back to my team lead.
That's cool. So you're almost like an Indiana Jones going through like ancient records and documents and
kind of
digitizing.
So at the end of the day, it's to give people a people group across the world access to a digital Bible. Right now they don't have that. Huh?
That's very cool. So I think I might call you Peter Patterson Jones.
I'll do.
Yeah.
And by the way, give Steve some smelling salts. He fainted in the chat when he saw me.
That's great. That's neat that you're using open source tools for that also. I think it was a few weeks ago, Ulfnick shared a tool that he used with Tesseract. I think it was with Tesseract. But he created a script so he could like take screenshots of things and then convert it to text, like PDFs and whatnot. He's got a really neat tool for that he kind of assembled together because he's uber smart.
Yeah, Tesseract is about 95% accurate. The scans are not that clean, of course. And they're from old books, so that doesn't help. And a lot of the languages across the world use a lot of macrons and accents and lines above, lines below. Different. They use curly V's, and there's a lot of recoding to be done once you OCR it.
Did you say take screenshots and that extracts the text?
Yes.
Did you say?
Yes.
Tesseract works on images, not PDFs.
Right.
So you open up the PDF, you take a screenshot of the PDF, and then you scroll down, take another screenshot, save those files into PNG, and then you tell Tesseract to convert that PNG to text.
Wow.
Oh, that's super cool. I like it. There's probably a way to pipe Ulfnick be the guy to talk to about this.
There probably is a way to automate it a little bit more than I do. But I do a lot of terminal and wildcards and such. Huh?
Yeah. But I love that you're using your open source tools to benefit people across the world.
Yeah.
And that's a really neat.
Yeah. Notepad
really
QQ is a great. Yeah, Notepad QQ is a great text editor, and I also use Xernal, not Xjournal, but Xernal++. That's a open source. It's a PDF reader, but it does a whole lot more. You can write on it. You can highlight with markers and such, and it saves a layer in a separate file. So it's great for that kind of work. And it's all open source.
Super cool. Notepad QQ. That's another one to put on the list of text editors that we talk about, right?
Yeah.
How many more are there? Hopefully there are more. They just keep growing like weeds. Well, very cool, Peter. That's a neat project that you're doing, and I'm so glad you joined. So sorry to put you on the spot, but I couldn't help it.
Oh, I knew you would, so don't worry.
Yeah, it just had to be done. Well, if you have not done the straw polls yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Please do them. They are fun straw polls. One on, do you like touchscreens? Another, which distro should we dig into next? And do you prefer to buy physical or digital video games? So check out those straw polls. And Eris does such a good job of putting these things together and keeping me on task. I sometimes feel bad for him because he has to deal with my bit of sloppiness. So thank you, Eris, for all the work that you do. I super appreciate it. You do such great work behind the scenes. I thank you for that very much.
Yes, he does.
So Leo has voted 3 times. Good job, Leo. He's done them each 3 times. So, but, he goes by that. What do they say? Like, I think Steve's very own. He would know this. In Chicago, they say vote early, vote often. So Steve falls in. Leo has done that. Thank you, Leo. Vote early, vote often. Excellent. Well, Eris, how are those straw polls shaking out?
Let me see if anybody voted more. I'll refresh it one last time. So the first poll is actually credit to Mark, who's not here today, I think, right?
He's a busy guy.
Yeah. he was talking about touchscreens and if people like them or not. So it's kind of based on that. It's not exactly what he said, but it's inspired by his suggestion.
Okay.
So it's do you like touchscreens? Number 1 answer is I like them only on my phone and tablet, and that got 49%. 15% said I dislike touchscreens. More physical buttons, please. 12% said I like them only on my phone. 9% said touchscreen everything, I love them. 9% said other. 6% said I like them only on my phone, tablet, and laptop. And that was it.
Cool.
Another poll was, do you prefer to buy physical video games or digital versions? 21% said physical. 21% said digital. 21% said no preference. 14% said I don't buy video games.
Boo. I'm just kidding. I take that back. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that.
10%
Firmly in the
said-
physical camp over here.
10% said Tux Penguin, of course. And 7% said whatever's on sale. 7% said other.
Well, that's a 3-way tie for physical, digital, and no preference. That's pretty wild.
Yes. And the final poll was, which distro would you like to be a distro exploration?
So,
Final decision to be determined, I put TBD.
all right, so we should probably then for next week, because we're doing a distro exploration next week. So maybe in the next week section, let's go over that. What do you think? I know I should have discussed with you ahead of time, but I
Okay,
didn't.
that's fine.
So
we'll skip that for now.
All right, we'll skip that one for now. We'll come back to it. We'll do straw poll part 2 next week. So the results, don't look, but vote, but don't look at the results because I don't want anyone cheating. But I guess if you want to, I don't care. It's not that big a deal. Go ahead and cheat. That's fine. So I love the replies. Should be interesting.
Yes, there were several replies. Because last week we had 2 polls, and then I just added another one for this week. So
Okay.
they piled up. First person said other. #other. If I'm considering 2 laptops with similar specs, I might consider the touch as the tiebreaker, but I don't necessarily have to have it either way.
That's interesting. Now I think touch does take up more, like having that matrix does suck up some juice. So is that a consideration? I wonder for like how long, like battery life and whatnot. Would that be a consideration? I know he's not there. We don't know what
I
person
think
this is.
I think it also depends on how you use your laptop. Some people just have to have it like a desktop plugged in all the time.
Okay.
It shouldn't matter that way. But yeah, like you said, if it's a portable machine, the touchscreen will eat into the battery.
Yeah.
That is a consideration.
Which is a thought.
Person 2 said, I voted touch for phone and tablet. It's not that touchscreen devices can't be used for the things that you can do on laptops and desktops. It's just that the apps that I use on my laptop and desktop don't have touch versions yet. And then they said, I have an issue with laptops with touchscreens for other reasons. It just makes the display that much heavier than the center of balance. Makes them less usable in the lap. Tips over.
Oh, that's interesting.
I could very well imagine desktop-only apps for 3D modeling, CAD IDEs working well with touch.
I can't, but okay.
So we have quite a few responses. So I'll go on to the next one.
Okay.
Person 3. My answer is somewhat similar to person 2. I generally don't find them useful on a laptop or a desktop screen, except for very specific applications. For some of the audio work I use Wave's audio DSP system, and it's very nice to have a touchscreen for control of that. Same with certain audio mixing applications. It really speeds up the process For most things, I would say no, though. One thing I have noticed on Mac and Linux, I definitely prefer not to have a touchscreen. On Windows, I find myself using it more, but I still don't enjoy it. I'm not in any way trying to be negative towards Windows, but one might assume it's because the touchscreen interface of Windows is better. I don't think that is the case. I think it boils down to the keyboard, mouse, trackpad interface of Mac and Linux being good enough that touchscreen isn't necessary. For me, at least, trackpad gestures alleviate most of the need for anything I would use touch for.
Hmm.
Person four said, which distro would you like to be a distro explanation mean? And touchscreens and touchscreen UIs can stay, and then they put a lot of
Expletive.
symbols off my desktop. Thank you very much. And I reply back. I guess every few weeks we do a distro exploration where everyone in the community, if they wish, can try out a certain distro. Then throughout the week on different social platforms and or Linux Saloon Live, we share our thoughts on the distro. The poll is to gauge interest. Like the poll states, the final decision will be later in Linux Saloon Live. Person five said, "Not gonna lie, I think you could buy physical. Not gonna lie, I didn't think you could buy physical copies of video games anymore." And person six said, "Vote early, vote often. See no evil emoji." Person seven said, "Digital because it hides my shame of 700 games." Person eight said, "PC games, digital, convenience. Switch games, physical. There's just something satisfying about having physical copies of Nintendo games."
Okay.
Person nine said, "I'll buy physical versions of a game if it is for a console, but I'm okay with digital versions of PC. I have been known to additionally buy digital versions of some Switch games for traveling purposes." And then they put, "Frankly, piracy is easy for PC. So I'm always going to be able to play my digitally purchased games library one way or another. On console, I have to worry about Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft shutting down the respective stores or services."
That's a good point.
And finally, person 10 said, "Other. I like touchscreens on phones, tablets, and on some computers. I don't like it for my desktop or laptop. Maybe I changed my mind. But I do want it on my kitchen computer so that I can interact with the computer with just my knuckles when I have to scroll down or whatever to look at a recipe. Touchscreens are dependent on the specific application of the device itself. If I am going to do any sort of writing or creation or of something, a computer sans the touchscreen is preferred. If I have a machine that I am using to consume content, touchscreen it up. I think it could make an argument for it as an additional input on laptop or desktop, but it truly seems like a waste."
That was me because I use it on my kitchen computer. I couldn't live without it because my hands will be a mess. The pads in my hands, and so I can still my knuckles and I can scroll up and down on things and hit the screen. And yeah, so I like that. Yeah, Leo says, "Yeah, touchscreen's only worth it when making tortillas." And it says, "I hate touchscreens because of the fingerprints it leaves, and it drives my OCD." I think she means nuts. Yes, that's a lot of interesting, really interesting topics or points of view, especially on the digital versus physical games. Like with the Nintendo, I totally agree. Physical, because if you have, they shut down their stores, and so when they shut down their stores and you made a purchase, then what? With physical, they shut down a store. You still got the physical copy, so what does it matter? So yeah, I think for consoles, I agree, and it's interesting for PCs. They're saying digital. I don't know if it's considered PC, but like for the Commodore 64, I like to get the physical copies. So even though that's a 40-year-old computer, but what do I know? What about you, Adam? You said something about you only buy, or you prefer physical. So what about like for PC games? Are there still physical PC games you can buy?
Probably not. For very, very few. I kind of stopped playing PC games in general, so
Oh, really?
for the most part, yeah. Except for the Steam Deck, is about my only PC gaming.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely prefer physical games because I guess it's more of an intentful choice of what game I'm gonna play. Because like if you give me, a huge list of digital games, I'm just probably not gonna choose much. Because you get that kind of choice paralysis going on. But with physical games, it's like my choice to go over to the shelf, pick that game out, put the disc or cartridge in, and play makes me more likely to keep playing the game
Okay.
than if I just click it. Because if it's just a digital like easy, double click, it opens, whatever. I'm probably gonna play until maybe I die or something, and I'll be oh, okay. I got all these other games I can play, no big deal. But like if I went through the trouble of picking that specific game off the shelf and putting it in and setting it all up, then I'm more likely to stick with it because I went through the actual effort, and it kind of gives you that connection to the game itself.
My question is, how physical is a physical game?
That is also a good point. Because there was
I would say that the game exists at least partially on the media.
Partially, like then download 90 gigs worth of stuff to
Yeah, that
before
does
you
happen.
can get
Yeah.
it.
Or you get a game that's like completely on the disc, but it requires an online connection, so it's fundamentally digital in that
Oh,
way.
Yeah.
right.
Looking at you, Gran Turismo 7.
There was a game I got for the PlayStation 4, and this is like early on when I got the PlayStation 4, which was like 2 years ago or whatever, maybe 2 years ago. And I popped the game in, and then it had to do updates. I'm like, well, I figured like maybe like a quick patch or whatever, something like that. So there was nothing quick about it. There actually was no PlayStation 4 playing that day. I had to wait till the next day before I could actually, because I ran out of time. And so I thought, well, that was kind of a waste of a gaming night with the kids, But
It didn't have updates? My Super Metroid cartridge.
you're right. Absolutely right.
That's something I really appreciate about retro gaming. It's just there's nothing between you and the game. You just put the game in, grab the controller, turn it on, do your thing.
Exactly. So I see Ben put in the chat, he could have said something, but instead he used the chat. It says, I personally hate physical games, never like them, to be honest. Well, I'm glad you're being honest, Ben, for one. I can understand that, the convenience of just going through a digital library. Yeah, I get it. Although, do you think there's a concern from that perspective? Like, so the games from my childhood, I can share with my kids, right? The
Correct.
games from my kids' childhood, will they be able to share it with their kids?
If
That's
they're
what-
still online, yeah.
That's one of the concerns that archivists always talk about for games and media,
Mhm.
especially if something has got like a severe copyright, like you can't even like hold a copy because it's like digital only.
Mhm.
It's very dubious legally sometimes in order to archive the property. But then if nobody does it, it could just disappear. Obviously, this mostly applies to more obscure titles because you imagine anything that's really popular, probably somebody has a copy somewhere.
Like
Yeah.
when my kids were playing, I'm not a huge gamer anymore. Like I used to play games with my daughter many years ago, but when they used to buy games, it used to frustrate me that we'd be paying top dollar, then we had to wait like half a day or a day to download so much gigs worth of stuff just to get the game going. And I used to think to myself, why am I paying top dollar for this when I'm using up all my bandwidth and my time and my energy to get
Yeah.
the game going?
Good point. Now, an argument in favor of like Ben and then what you just said, Colin. Anna says, one of the things I hated with games that were DVD back in the day was being careful not to scratch the disc. And that's very true. Because DVDs can be fixed, but like a Blu-ray, if you scratch a Blu-ray, it's pretty much game over.
Man, if you scratch a Blu-ray, you were going at it because those things are really difficult to scratch. They have like a anti-scratch coating and stuff on them.
Yeah, I know.
If
And
you scratched a Blu-ray, you really hated that Blu-ray.
I have a copy of Mario Maker that is unreadable for the Wii U.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's impressive.
Yeah, my point was with my chat message, Nate, was the fact that I barely use my PS4 or my Xbox One. So, and I've seen the PS5. I'm just not interested, to be honest.
I got you. No, it makes sense. I mean, everyone's got different strokes for
mean,
different folks.
Plus, I mean, here's the thing. I have so many Steam games, plus so many on other platforms. I just rebuying all that stuff physically ain't gonna happen. And plus, that's hundreds of dollars that my dad and I had invested on all those games. I just don't feel like doing that all over again. So plus over half those games, especially SWTOR for the example, it's rumored to be coming out on Xbox, but again, I just don't have the funds nor the etc. to play something like that on the Xbox, because Xbox Live is something that I just rarely use. So yeah.
Another
Yeah, I would just rather stick to the digital version, to be perfectly honest.
Gotcha. Very interesting comment from Barco Verur, if I got that correctly. I hope I did. He says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. When I became a man, I put away cheap childish things and bought more expensive toys from Japan. And that makes me think of the more expensive things I've purchased that were once cheap childish toys.
I've still got an original Xbox, and when the kids were young, to save the disc that I bought, let's just say that Xbox had some tweaks done to it. So any game that I bought, I could dump down onto the Xbox, so they could just play the game from a menu rather than changing discs. That way they wouldn't scratch the disc, because that was the only way to preserve them. Because you know what kids are like, they just scratch things left, right, and center. So it was good. I could buy the game, dump it down, and then they could just play it. And I used to have all their movies and everything on it as well, which was awesome. I still got that. Still got that original Xbox.
Yep. I will say a media that you can share with your kids and they can't break it is VHS tapes. So if you have VHS tapes, it's child friendly. They don't mess it up, although they're not kind and they don't rewind. But that is a medium that can handle the rigors of child abuse from childs, not children, not.
Yeah. Definitely. I've still got 2 VHS players, and I've got a whole heap of original Disney VHS tapes. Yeah. So I'm holding on to those.
Now, Sean Gould makes a really interesting point here too. He says, even if you have a physical copy of a game, if you're looking forward to sharing it with your kids in X years time, you may not be able to find the type of drive, CD, DVD, etc., to install the game with. And that is a good point. Or if those drives still hold up. I know a lot of times those optical reader drives, they start to fail over time or whatever. But I know that, I think, was it Adam? Did you share with me? And he just came back in, so welcome back. Oh, and Prophetic is here. 777 Prophetic, so welcome. Adam, was it you that shared with me something about replacing the drive on a Nintendo GameCube with some sort of a solid state solution? But anyway, so yeah, that's a good point. So then you have to take the physical copies and convert them to a digital. But there's something about the physical still. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, there is something about physical. But like I say, when you buy a physical disc now, like I said, you're downloading stuff onto there, so you're still relying on the disc, like you say, aren't you? Really, at the end of the day, because it's on the disc.
I guess even
all that physical disc does is just says, "I've got the disc, let me play it," isn't it? That's all it does. It just validates, doesn't it? I'm pretty sure. It validates that you've got the disc, but everything's on the hard drive.
Right. Well, I mean, but older games, though, like the GameCube or PlayStation.
Oh, the older games. Yeah, the older games,
or Xbox even. I'm not sure where the cutoff is, but those had kind of a slightly different story with those.
I think Adam is very right when he says that it's a very conscientious choice. When you take out something physical, you're gonna use it. You're not gonna be just switching it out for something else. And when you have a giant list of digital titles of, let's say, music or anything, you can easily click here and then click off. And then when people used to play a music record, they would put the music record and listen to the whole thing, right? And now everything's just about singles. It's not about listening to the whole CD or album anymore. Well, some people do, but I mean, for the most part, most people just want singles.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's a good point, because I used to buy, I don't know about anyone else, but when I used to buy CDs, as you buy a copy of someone's music, but you buy it for a particular song. But then when you play those songs over and over, you actually get to like more of the other songs on the CD than the song that you actually purchased it for.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone, yeah.
Colin, I just posted that I still buy CDs.
Mhm.
I love buying albums because the order of the album is as the band wants you to listen to it. There's a particular order that they want. You get the actual experience then.
Sure, absolutely. Yep.
So to answer your question from a bit ago,
Yes.
because audio is wonderful under Linux. Was yeah, to replace the optical drive in my GameCube with it's called an ODE, or an optical drive emulator.
Mhm.
So in this case, it was a very plug and play kind of thing, so no soldering or any kind of mod chips needed. But basically disassemble the GameCube, take out, unconnect, disconnect, and like take out the optical drive, and then this other board like plugs into the place, and on that board there's an SD card slot. And so you can put like ISO images of GameCube games and stuff on the SD card and slide it into the slot on the board. And then when you boot up you have to use a special piece of software called Swiss that lets you, it's kind of like a bootloader of sorts for the GameCube.
Mhm.
And it has like a menu where you can go and select the game from the card and everything. So that way I don't have to worry about the optical drive failing, because it's just a board, right? It's just
Mhm.
solid state stuff. And so makes it easier. You just go and pick the, from the list or whatever. And GameCube games are stupid expensive, so resellers can eat one. And use my GC loader, thanks.
Yeah, I also buy CDs. Actually, I haven't bought a CD in a while. I've been doing like individual downloads, like from different, sites and whatnot. I don't give any, since no sites are sponsoring me. So those sites, you can download DRM-free songs, for artists and whatnot. So I tend to do that now, mostly because I just can't get CDs in like in the store anymore. But I have purchased several. I mean, I used to purchase CDs all the time. I got all the Linkin Park CDs. Big fan. Love the Linkin Park. Anyway.
I haven't bought music CD for a long time, to be honest. Most people nowadays, I've noticed, they all play Spotify. Everyone's Spotifying these days.
I do both.
I don't know what the deal is with Spotify. Does a certain amount of money go to the...
That's how all these kind of work. Yeah. Like a certain amount of money goes
Yeah,
to the platform, a certain amount of money goes to the label and all that.
It's usually the label gets the bulk of the money, and then the artist gets pennies.
Right.
Which is pretty standard for the music industry.
But Colin, just for the laugh, here's the latest CD I bought. Led Zeppelin concert from 51 years ago.
Nice.
Wow. Oh, jeez.
And that's why several artists in the past have abandoned Spotify, because they say they don't get paid at all for their music. But then usually Spotify is like the only place in town, so sometimes they end up coming back anyways.
Yeah, sometimes it's the record labels who make the decision too. It's not always the artist. And I know if you use Brave, you can bypass the ads. So sorry, artist, but if you use Brave and then play Spotify through Brave, you get to play no ads.
I know I purchased.
You get Brave ads.
I purchased quite a few singles from the download now, because if I really like the song, then what I've been doing, I want to support the artists because I really like,
What platform do you use to buy the song?
There's some other platforms out there. If you watch the artists, they'll direct you to where you want to go.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think SoundCloud is one, and then there was Bandcamp.
Bandcamp, yes, yeah.
But they've been less reliable lately. So, but there's others out there, and sometimes they just have like, if you find their webpage, they'll usually direct you to where you can get an MP3 download. I know Amazon. I don't know if they still do, but they have in the past.
That's true. Yeah.
DRM free music you can buy. So that's that. If you want to go that route.
One thing about Amazon is if you buy a CD off Amazon that's sold by Amazon, they'll actually give you the MP3s as well.
Really?
Yeah. So you can. It's kind of nice because when you're waiting for it to be shipped, you can still listen to it, even if it's crappy quality.
Mm-hmm.
Not every album, but the most
crappy quality.
Yeah, most of the ones I've bought.
Yeah, the big names.
You have to buy it specifically from Amazon though, not from like a third party.
Do you guys like store your music that you're kind of like out of season with, because I used to have like a huge catalog of stuff that I just kind of lost touch with. I just don't really, I'm not into that certain styles of music as much anymore. Do you guys like music hoard, or you guys are okay with letting some stuff go as you guys migrate around and stuff? Because I lost some stuff.
I
I
hoard.
hoard is Spotify, and my specific like music I really love are on CDs.
All my digital music is on pCloud, and which is great because I can use VLC from Windows or Linux or wherever.
Nice.
Just point it to the folder, and it'll play. pCloud has its own player, but it's not as good as using VLC.
I don't know that one.
All right, what's pCloud? I haven't heard.
Yeah.
I think
It's
I've
like
heard of it, but
it's like Dropbox, but a lot better and cheaper.
Oh, okay.
pCloud. And on Linux is great because your whole drive is virtual. It's an app image that it gives you a direct link to your cloud, and you don't have to have physical. You don't have to have anything on your actual hard drive. It's all virtual. But
That's
you
nice.
can if you wish.
I'm not
That is
sure
nice.
pCloud is the cloud I want to rain.
Yeah.
Cloud.
I see what you did there.
So I was thinking about switching the conversation up a bit, Nate. If
Sure.
that's all right.
Fire away. Yeah.
I spoke a little bit a couple of weeks ago talking about open source tumbleweed.
Mhm.
Yeah. I've been doing a little bit of what can you say, VirtualBox installs with tumbleweed, and I'm just trying to get my head around BTRFS. Now, what I noticed was I actually set up a VirtualBox with 2 hard drives, and I installed tumbleweed, and what it did was the second hard drive, because they were fresh hard drives, it looked like it picked up the hard drive and it mounted it as a folder in under the volumes. You know what I mean? But then I did a second install, and I actually formatted it as an ext4 and put some folders and everything on it, treated it as a data drive. Did another install, and it didn't touch it, and it actually came up as a normal partition in the file explorer. But I find it interesting that BTRFS does some weird things on install when you've got 2 hard drives. Because the reason I'm doing this is because I was thinking about trying it out on my actual hardware. But but I'm still testing because I'm just not sure about this BTRFS scenario.
Are you trying to
So I did
salvage your
find-
home directory, like your home file stuff?
Yeah, well, I use a separate data drive, always have done, so I can always install when I want to. So I just didn't. I wanted to, because what I do is I mount my data drive in FSTab, and I've got a script to do that once I install something. So I just wanted to make sure it didn't touch that. It looks like it doesn't if it recognizes that it's existing.
Right.
But if it's a brand new unknown disk, it looks like it actually puts it in the pool of the sub volumes, which was really strange. I've never seen that before, but I'm not sure if that's a normal behavior of BTRFS or not.
I haven't tried that particular scenario. Now I want to play with that because that's a really interesting thing you're processing out. But I have done many times a separate home volume, and I just point to it separately. It actually puts it in the FS tab, or FSTAB as some people like to call it, which kind of sounds cooler.
FSTab, yeah.
FSTAB.
FSTab, okay.
But file
Yeah,
system.
I think there's a check mark where if you have to just wipe it, that you have to declare it through the checkbox and check it off. So I guess that keeps it safer. So if you have to do something to ruin your drive, so you should be good as long as you don't hit that check mark to format.
Right. You have to.
That's right.
It doesn't default to formatting anything. It will try and if
Just mount it.
Yeah, just mount it. So
The installer has a lot of options, so it does have expert options and guided options. Yeah, it's got many different options, so it can. That's why I'm doing a lot of this testing before I decide I want to go any further with it, because
That's good.
the installer is the main thing that concerns me. You need to know if it's got an Ubuntu installer or a Calamares, that's fine because I'm used to that. But also I found that in the Calamares installer, if you're using BTRFS, it has a folder called modules, and it has a little file that you can manipulate, and you can create on the fly sub volumes that you want it to have within
Nice.
the BTRFS. I seen a video that Eric Dubois made talking about these things, and he actually adjusted the volume. He deleted certain sub volumes and added sub volumes, and that's pretty interesting, I must say. I'm just fascinated by this BTRFS, but I'm not sure how good it is. But I know you've been using BTRFS for quite a long time, haven't you, Nate?
Yeah, my main file server, it's a BTRFS RAID pool, RAID 10, and I have 6 drives in there. So all the drives
6 drives.
Yeah, well, actually 7 drives total. Because the motherboard couldn't boot off of the RAID, the software RAID. So I set up a separate drive for the booting of it. Anyway, so it actually works great. So I have I want to say there's 12 actual SATA connections being utilized. No, wait, no, it's not 12. I'm sorry. 10 SATA connections all being utilized in that machine.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's really neat. Like if you set up a RAID with a partition thing, it will you select which drives you want, and then it'll create the pool automatically, and then you select all these things. It's actually really neat. And if you rebuild it, like let's say somebody in your family does you a favor, and when the UPS is beeping, making lots of noise because the power's out, they turn it off and corrupt the drive. Let's say that happens, because it happened. They're doing me a favor by turning off the UPS and corrupts the boot drive. It's just replacing the drive and reinstalling it. It will recognize that pool, even though there's nothing.
Oh.
It'll actually say, "Oh, this is a pool," and it figured it all out. And I just remounted that pool of drives. So that was actually pretty awesome. So
Right.
Yeah, there's lots of neat things that it will do.
So you swapped it out, and
So-
it just said that's the thing that we're going to use for
Yep.
that. No pointing, no configure. You just swapped out hard drives, and then it just.
I put a new bootstrap hard drive, an SSD this time, and then when I went to go install it, it said, "Hey, there's a RAID pool here. Do you want to add that?" Basically, is what I mean. I just had to check to add it, basically to mount it, and it all worked without any hitches. Like it was like I was worried that I was going to lose my data, but it was not. It was a zero problem install. I just had to set up like MB again and all the different little nitnoid things that I have to set up, but no, everything was great.
And that's beyond ButterFS. That's a RAID thing you configured.
Correct. It's a ButterFS RAID configuration. Yeah, six drives, 6 drives of ButterFS on a RAID 10 pool.
So all those drives make up one complete drive. Is that
Correct.
how it works?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's striped and mirrored so that I can actually lose any 2 drives, and I won't lose any data.
Okay.
That's why I did RAID 10.
That's pretty.
It's a little bit
Yeah,
excessive,
that's
probably.
No, but it's interesting though, I must say.
Was
Because
makes it more
RAID's
bulletproof.
Yeah. How do you normally use RAID? RAID's normally set up with a distro, or is it an actual special
Command line.
application you got to use for RAID normally?
I don't know what normal is, and you can buy RAID cards, but the reason I didn't go with a RAID card is because if I have a hardware failure on the RAID card, then I need to buy that exact same piece of hardware in order to recognize those drives again. So I did a software RAID within ButterFS, within the OpenSUSE installer.
Yeah.
And then I set that up in there, because then if I have to move everything, like if the motherboard blows up, everything just blows up and dies. If I move all those disks to a new computer, it will then recognize, mount those drives as being part of a RAID array, and then put them all together as a pool. You select, this is where I want to mount it, this is where I want it mounted, and you're off to the races.
That's just really interesting, I must say, because I know I've done RAID many, many years ago. I went to a course, and I think it was done not via BIOS, I don't think, or is it via BIOS to do RAID?
You can do that. You can do it.
Yeah,
via...
yeah. So it must have been that I did. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
So yeah, it's pretty great. Yeah. Leo says RAID is
It's-
only bulletproof if you have extra drives already waiting to replace broken drives. Now, the part that I haven't worked out yet is I know there's a way to do it, and I need to expand my storage. It's a 5.5 terabyte pool, and they're all like 2 terabyte drives each. Well, it's actually less than that because the marketing garbage, so it should be 6 terabytes. But anyway, I want to start replacing those drives one at a time and rebuild them. I just don't know the process for that. I'm pretty sure it's not a hot swap because it's all standard PC hardware. So I haven't worked that out yet. It's not really been a problem quite yet, but I do need to figure that one out.
I think it's called re-silvering or something like that.
I'm
That
sorry?
process.
Say again? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's like called re-silvering or something like that, or that to like when you do it preemptively, or
Oh,
Resilvering is like rebuilding the RAID.
yeah.
Like if you remove it, like you take a disk out and you put a new one in.
well, it's something I need to do at some point in time. Those discs are this fall. They'll be
So-
4 years in service.
So if you take one disk out and put another disk in, then that data will go onto that disk, and then you can keep swapping them out. Can you do it that way or not? Is that how it
Depending on
works?
You have the RAID, yeah.
Okay, it's interesting. Gives me something to
So
think about.
if you have RAID 1 where you have a mirror of each of them, then when you like say you have 4 disks and there's a mirror of all of them, right? Then you take one disk out, it's just going to copy the contents of the others to that new
Right.
disk. But if you have like
Okay.
RAID 5 or 6 or something like that, then you have like the parity data on each of the drives and the other data on the drives that kind of fills in the gaps. But yeah, that's the idea, is that you can lose a disk depending on how many disks and the type of RAID. You can lose X number of disks and replace them without losing data.
Yep.
Not a backup. No,
Yes,
RAID is not a backup.
Dan Simmons in the chat says RAID is not a backup. It's a high availability solution, which is true.
Right.
So I'm not exactly sure. That it's. I think the idea of backup, it gets a little fuzzy. I think sometimes.
So a backup is like if everything totally craps the bed, that's what saves you.
Okay.
But RAID is just there so like you don't have downtime. Like if a drive messes up or starts having problems, you can replace that drive without downtime.
So I have.
Right.
Then I have a question for you, Adam, because you're more of a professional than I am in such things. Or Dan, you can always pipe into in the chat. I have my data in my house, and then some data is propagated to a bunch of machines. Now I want to have another machine out here that's actively copying everything that's on the main system. So is that considered a backup or just a high availability solution?
A backup would be something that is usually like a cold storage.
Okay.
Is like ultimately one you want, but you also want like you could have like a warm backup, as it were. So something that's maybe not like something you access all the time, but maybe it's up and running if you need to get to it quickly. But you kind of always want to have that like cold backup as well if you can, which is why a lot of enterprises use like tape backups and stuff, because those are very like resilient backups. And the tapes don't need, you don't need to keep powering it, right? If you have another machine that's your backup, what happens if, the power goes out or, things like that, and you can't get that data? It's a lot of contingencies that can go wrong with just a warm backup. So having like a cold backup, say every month you plug in some external drives and write to those, then you unplug them and store them, right?
Right.
That kind of thing.
So there's a system I've become recently aware of. I don't want to say familiar, called like Datto. It's some kind of a service that actively like makes hourly backups and stores them off site or like another site out of your server room. And I don't fully understand that, but should that be considered a warm backup?
Yeah, I mean, depending on how it's, probably, because it's usually like something the idea of like the warmness is how easily you can recover that data. So like if it's hot data, right, that's like something like a Google Drive, or something like that you can just like grab from immediately, no worries. And then like a warm would be something that's on like slower, drives, or like kind of less easy to just get to. It might take a bit to get to it. And then like a really cold one would be either
it's zipped or something remotely offsite.
More that it would be on like cheaper storage that because usually when you're storing offsite, you're usually storing in like some other data center. Assuming like if you're a big enterprise, you probably have your own DR sites and stuff. But if you're a smaller person, you'd have a different like offsite thing, usually in a cloud provider or some kind of like thing like that. So if you're looking at something like S3 Glacier, it's gonna take longer to get your data from S3 Glacier than something like a normal S3. But it's also going to be way cheaper to store your stuff in an S3 Glacier than a normal S3. It's kind of like tiering your backups, right? Like
Right.
if you have a lot of data, you don't want to spend a lot of money to back up a lot of data. So you got to consider that.
So Leo says in chat, let me make sure I get the right one here. Says regular people don't need high availability. They just need an extra copy of their data somewhere. Hot, warm, cold, it doesn't matter. Just have 2 copies, not RAID. And I remember Adam, you saying 2 copies is too little or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, I think I need some sort of a cold backup solution. I don't have one right now that's real effective. So everything is either hot or warm.
I'll tell you what I bought. I purchased yesterday, although when I went to the store, it wasn't in store, so I've got to wait till Tuesday. But it's this thing that looks like a big USB, and it's got caps on each end. So it's got on either end, it's got a USB-A, and the other end, it's got a USB-C. And you open it up, and you can put inside of that an NVMe disk.
Ooh.
Right? So so this is what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to try and use that as a backup. Just plug it in, just write everything, which should be a lot faster than your normal spinning drive, and use that as a second backup, and it should be quicker. Although I'm going to, hopefully, when I move into my new place, whenever that happens, I'm going to build a new computer and have USB via PCIe, which I believe is a lot faster than just your standard USB. So that's another way. So copying will be a lot quicker.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I noticed on Linux, copying on USB slows down dramatically over time. It gets slower and slower when you're copying. I don't know if anyone else experiences that, but I do.
I haven't experienced that. I'm using a lot of like USB lately, like with this system here. A lot of things are just USB. It's been very performant.
Yeah.
Like I have a drive that's on a hub, whatever. And although I'm not using it for active, I'm just using it as like a holding spot. Like it's a backup for my archive, essentially, an archive backup. So that seems to be fast enough. I don't know.
It may be the Intel NUC, maybe the drives. I don't know whether it's this patch of the kernel or whatever, but if I've got a lot of video and stuff, it'll start off real quick and it just gets slower and slower and slower. It's quite frustrating.
That's interesting. I haven't been experiencing that. Like I used to experience that like years ago, like many years ago, but I haven't experienced it. I don't know if it's a hardware or software thing that's changed. I do recall an episode, I want to say of Linux User Space or something, where Leo got really mad about, it says it's done copying, but it's really not done copying because there's some sort of like flushing that's going on in the I/O. He says, I just want to be able to yank that sucker out. And so it was a frustrating rant that he went on that I laughed at because I felt his same pain. But I have noticed that lately I don't seem to see that as much. So I don't know if maybe the meter has changed, how Linux is tracking, or how the desktop or whatever is tracking the data transfer, or if it's a hardware change. I can't say for sure.
We've got a couple of comments here, actually, Nate.
Okay, yeah.
Ariane says that it has to do with the onboard cache, and Leo says the slowdowns are usually down to running out of cache on your receiving disk. That's interesting.
Yeah, it says Ariane says proper SSDs have RAM chips that handle some caching, but that's full. If that's full, you have to work with the speed of the NAND chips.
I know there's a funny comic that was posted about testing your backups, because you can have it backed up off somewhere and a certain hard drive and then plug it in and it's corrupted. Because maybe you got too cold one night in the basement or something. And how do you guys go about testing your backups? If you guys do test your backups, what do you guys do?
So the backups, when I take backups, I use it's called Back in Time because it felt like a Back to the Future reference, and that's why I used it. I know it's great reasoning, and bravo, right?
think they have a
And-
flat back of it too.
They probably do. So I like it because I can very easily. All I have to do is plug in the drive, and I can access the media right on there. It uses hard links somehow, but I can go into a snapshot and I can see everything in that snapshot, and I can access the data. And I don't test the backups like regularly, but I've tested that. I have
That you
I have
can look
restored
at
from
it.
that. I can look at it and I can access the data directly on that backup.
Ah, so it's like a copy, like a pure
Yeah,
copy.
But it does incremental changes. So it scans through, and if there are changes too, it only makes backups of the copy of the changes.
Ah, okay.
What are you using for that?
Back
Sorry,
in
I missed
time.
that.
Yeah, it's called
Oh, back in
time.
time.
There's an article I
Are
think
you-
on cubiclenate.com. I don't know. Maybe Jinder will find out. I think I did an article on it. I could be wrong. I can't remember now.
I use free file sync, and I just use mirror, so it just makes all the changes and deletes anything that I've deleted. So,
Okay.
but you've got to be
what was that
careful
called,
'cause
Colin?
free file sync.
Free file sync.
I thought it's like free
Yeah,
fall.
and
Free fall would be
That's
fun.
what. Yeah.
Free fall sync.
free file.
Yeah, but fall would be much more fun.
Free file sync, and it's you just download it, double click it, it runs. I just make a menu entry for it, and it's a GUI. And there's a mirror option, and there's a couple of other options. I use mirror because I've been caught out with deleting stuff that I didn't want to before. Can't remember how that worked, but caught myself out a couple of times.
It happens.
But yeah, I just use the mirror. Yeah.
So Dan Simmons says, at work we have a warm backup and a cold backup. One copy goes to a warm disk backup, the other copy goes to tape. Now, is there affordable tape solutions for home? Now, in my mind, I'm imagining like those 1960s machines with the giant reels that spin very fast.
No,
That's what I
can't do
want.
that.
If we can do reels. No, Adam?
It depends on the amount of. I don't know about tape at home, but like it just depends on the amount of data you need, I guess.
I just want giant reels behind with some flashing lights around it. That's all I
That'd be
really want.
awesome.
Like when we're backing up like terabytes upon terabytes, like hundreds of terabytes of data. Like that's the difference.
Well, I'm backing up
in, like,
5.
needing a tape drive and not needing a tape drive, right?
Right.
Right. And so for me, I use CrashPlan. They have a CrashPlan small business. It costs money, just so you know, Linux people. It costs money.
I'm okay with spending money. It's
And so
Does not compute.
yeah, right. Anyway, so it's
You're a little
$10
low, a little
month
bit, Mike.
per
Adam, by the
device.
way, your mic is a
So-
little low.
It's because I'm not speaking into it.
There we
Um,
go.
Yeah, so it's $10 a month per device, and they do have a Linux client, but they do not just the backups, right? The increment, the timed backups as well, but they do versioning on your stuff. So every time you back up your stuff, if it's different, then they'll make a different version of that file, and if it's not, then for deduplication processes, don't bother with it. But that means that if I have all my backups up there and I need to restore something, I don't just have to restore from like whatever the last thing I put up there is. I could actually go back in time, and go back to the old version, right, and pull it from there off site. So like that's often someone else's data center, completely different, away from me. That's my offsite backup. And
I think
so-
that's the important distinction. Is like the version part, because
Right,
you
that is a
can
big
accidentally mirror
difference.
something, and then you want to get the older version, and you're kind of
Right. So like if you backed up a file and like it's changed and you're like, oh man, I need this file like but not this current version, or maybe it's a file you deleted like a year ago, but it backed up before you deleted it and you need that file back, it's there, right?
And I've
That
been
kind of
there.
thing.
I know it sounds rare, but I've been there where I needed the older version, not
Oh
the
yeah,
new one.
especially for important documents and things. Yeah. Big deal.
So it
And
looks like
you can encrypt it with your own key before you send it too, by the way.
that's
Oh,
cool.
that's cool. So welcome, Steve and Bill. It's so good to have you. Steve, by the way, is the least punchable face on the internet, and Bill is the most. So thank you both for being here.
Whoa.
I'm kidding, Bill. I take it back mostly.
Good
He's
evening.
trying out new lines for Linux out loud when he needs a co-host to beat up. That's what it comes down to.
Yes,
I
cue
would have
cards.
if you didn't say that, Nate, I would have been disappointed in you.
Listen, Bill doesn't hold back punches, I should say. He doesn't. He comes out swinging most of the time.
Usually.
So it
So
looks like no one like really kind of like a quote unquote test or backup. They just kind of confirm they can actually touch their files in the backup. It sounds like.
That's what I've been doing. But I have actually, I mean, so I've used it. Now I'm ashamed to say I haven't pulled backups the same way because I've been using Sync Thing. So I guess I have warm backups right now. But I should initiate a cold backup solution and test it out. But I think the problem that I find is, and this is I don't know if anybody else has this issue, but I seem, especially now that I'm doing like a lot of content creation stuff, I seem to be very rapidly filling up disks like
Oh yeah.
a lot. And then so I'm not testing the backups because I've run out of disk space to test the backups. So,
And that's why I brought this question up, because it's
Mhm.
almost like you need like a spare machine of your eSame hardware to like load it on
or even
to
similar.
really truly.
Well, yes and no. I mean, what I do here at home is everything that's critical, I don't actually save locally in my machine. I save it to my NAS. I do snapshots locally to the NAS, and then I have a external hard drive rotation that I do to a safe deposit box. So that's the NAS has its own built-in snapshot function, which makes it extremely easy to manage and support. I could also offsite a copy of that to my office as well, or what I've suggested too is like if you have a family member that you can with
Yeah.
another NAS, you can offsite. You can you can send it all encrypted, so it's not
Sitting there and open.
it's not sitting there in the open. It's encrypted at transit and encrypted at rest. It's enough to pass HIPAA audits. But in my case, I have the snapshots for internal backup. So if I overwrite a file that I needed, I can say, crap, there goes that. I'll just recover from the snapshot. And I do test my snapshots. And at work, our technicians are required to test recovery of files for clients every 2 weeks.
How do
The
you
ones
go
that
about
pay for it.
that?
I have a checklist that I have them follow that says you log into the offsite NAS, you roll the little slider to a date within the past 2 weeks, you go into a random directory, you open files, you make sure you can see it, you click restore to a file to the offsite restore directory that we make on the server. So in every
Bingo.
server that goes out, I have a specific folder called restore. And any files that the guys are testing for restore go in there, because I don't want them to overwrite a newer file with an older file that's actually in
Exactly.
production. So that's how we test them at the office. And I do the same thing here from time to time. You know, I test things to a restore folder in the NAS somewhere. But a NAS device really makes all the difference when you are running low on storage like that, especially if you are a content creator. And one of the perks of a NAS is that generally, because their volumes are software RAID, you can expand a drive on the fly. So it happens all the time where, I have a 2-bay NAS. It's got 2 6-bay drives in it with 2 6-terabyte drives. The drives fill up. Pull one drive, put a 16-bay in, let the array rebuild, put in the next 16-terabyte drive in the bay, and then it'll expand and rebuild at the same time without losing any data.
Yeah, that was kind of like where I was getting at. It's like and what's awesome what you said, Bill, was that you almost like stage your environments for those like restorations to simulate. It's almost like a simulated restoration in a safe, not quarantine, but set aside. And like that's a very IT like managed service enterprise type way of doing it. And what would you recommend for like a home person to kind of simulate that? That might be overkill, or do you think a home user could make use of that kind of like way of tackling it?
Home user could easily do it. If you grabbed a couple of external SSDs and you did something kind of like what Nate does with Sync Thing, just grab that external SSD and grab a file back off of that and save that to a different folder than where if you're testing a documents, maybe you make a folder in your computer called test restore or backup check, and you dump a file in there and you make sure you can double click that file and open it.
Bingo.
It doesn't have to be a NAS. It just has to be something that you don't keep on you, that is protected and in a safe place, whether that's a family home in a safe, whether that's a bank in a safe deposit box. If you're a business, maybe you have an agreement with a commercial entity like an Iron Mountain, or your MSP does it for you, however you go about it.
So
I
that's
got,
actually
I got an unpopular opinion.
yes,
that'll
I love
actually
unpopular
help
opinions.
with this.
No, this is great. This is
How
great,
about
actually.
how about we just don't store as much crap? Like really,
I like Adam's
like
idea. He's
reducing
not
the
wrong.
amount of data you have makes it a whole lot easier to keep this stuff in check.
Honestly, I think for most people, this is a non-issue. That's actually it's completely non-issue.
Most people they don't have music files. They stream their movies. They stream their music. They their games are usually digital downloads online. There's so many things that that take up a lot of space that exist outside of their world, their home. It's not really that big a deal. Most people's pictures are in Google Photos, iCloud, something like that. It's just, it's not even an issue for most people. It's just the people who want to hoard all this stuff. And I totally get it. I get it.
It's actually a really good
point. The best way is just reduce the amount of data, right?
Yeah. It's a really good point. That's a really good point. So like I probably don't need to keep all the raw footage that I keep for stuff that I do.
No, I delete mine, the raw footage once I've edited.
Yeah, once it's final.
Well,
yeah, once it's final, get rid of the original videos because they take up too much space.
Do you know how many times I've actually pulled from old videos though that I've done?
Oh well, yeah, but you got to give it you got to give a certain time though. I mean, once you've decided you pulled it from it, maybe I don't know what, a week later, 2 weeks later, probably after that, and you've finalised everything, you probably never need it again. To be honest, I was holding my original videos, and I started deleting them because you really don't need them. Once you've got the final finished product up on YouTube, you can still download it, but I always keep the one that I upload on disk. But the one thing I do, I've got 3 copies of my family pictures and videos. That's one thing that's dear to me.
Mm-hmm.
I make sure that I've got 3 copies of that. Everything else I've got 2 copies of. If I lose it, I'm not fussed. But definitely my family pictures and videos, you can never get that back. So I make sure I've got copies. I've got on USB, on an external hard drive, and on my data drive. Right. So I've always got those copies.
So
I lost my wedding video, which is soul crushing.
No. That is.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I got like grainy phone video stuff here and there on Instagram, but I lost my so I'm a little sensitive to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's actually, I think for me, honestly, like the data that I don't have actively backed up is backed up by DVDs. Really, it'd just be a lot of work. So I don't have anything everything that's to me that's precious. I have I think like 6 active backups right now. 1, 2,
wow.
6, yeah. But I don't have a cold storage. So, but that's not as much. That's not as much data. So I guess like with using Adam's example, what is whatever.
But it's still something.
Yeah. Well, but he says you shouldn't, whatever data you think is important, you shouldn't keep locally. But I also have it split between 2 different buildings as well. But I'm fortunate in that regard that I have that ability because of just the way I'm set up.
Yeah, maybe I might use my shed.
Might get hot
Also,
sometime.
I'm also going to make another crazy one here.
I like it. Go for it.
Don't sleep on Blu-ray archiving. Straight up. If you got like a Blu-ray drive, especially one that can write 4K, the dual layer ones, you got like 100 gig on a disc, right? Put your stuff on there. Blu-rays don't rot like CDs and DVDs. It takes forever for those to rot comparatively. And you can put them in a case, and you can put them in a safe deposit box or a fireproof box.
So
maybe
that's a good point.
It's a good idea.
That's not a bad idea. It's actually a pretty inexpensive solution, really. I mean, you have to have a Blu-ray drive and get the discs.
But that'll be considered cold, right?
Yes.
Correct. And they're a lot easier to store at someone else's house because it's not a NAS ticking over and heating up their house over in the corner.
Well, if it's not my house, I don't care.
So Blu-ray can hold 100 gig, did you say? 100 gig on a Blu-ray? Is it hold that much?
The Ultra HD Blu-rays, the newer ones, they can hold, I think, 100 gig for a dual layer. Yeah, I think the single layer is 50 and the dual layer is 100.
That's more than enough space for like all my really critical files.
Yeah,
right.
mission critical stuff.
You're not going to store like your Plex library on it, but like
no.
If you have all of your actual critical files, and I'd argue your entire photo library would fit in there, right?
For sure. It would definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a nice, easy way, and you just need a Blu-ray drive.
And looks like Leo agrees with you. Says Adam Grubbs wins the argument. Blu-ray for the win. So,
I can fit all my photos and videos on a 256 gig USB, which I've done, right? And I've still got space. So, you know, even 256 gig is good enough for me.
The problem with USB sticks is they're NAND, and if you let NAND sit for a long time, it'll actually lose the memory of the data.
Okay, I didn't
Blu-ray
know that.
is gonna stay there.
Right.
It's kind
Okay,
of
so
trippy.
yeah, fair enough.
It's kind of
Good point.
trippy if you think about it. Like you can literally store data on this circular piece of plastic, and it will
Yeah.
last for years. It's kind of like
Yeah.
we sometimes lose the appreciation of like how advanced we've gone, and that's just CD. Not even thinking about all the other stuff that's coming around.
That is absolutely true. If you think about it also, like how a CD works, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a video. This thing spins at like an incredible speed, and that eye can maintain a distance and track that.
So wild.
Yeah. And I think someone explained it. It's a little bit like a 747 being like 20 feet off the ground and scaling it like a mapping the terrain or whatever.
Wow.
At 700 miles an hour or whatever it's flying at, which to me sounds crazy.
Yeah. Sounds like another movie.
It does.
The reason why I brought up the whole testing the backup thing was because at our church, we have a big library of photos and videos, and our AV machine has a lot of stuff for our songs and music. And I'm thinking about, because there was one time there was a power outage and it fried the motherboard, and we were worried that it was fried the hard drive too, but thankfully the hard drive was salvageable. But like, what if the hard drive wasn't salvageable, and how fast could I get it running and for a service that started in like 2 hours, almost like a situational type thing I'm kind of like prepping for, training for. And that got me thinking about restoring the entire partitions, and also considering like how to restore like the files quickly, and just pull things if I have the time. So got all the good ideas.
For sure. It also makes me think too, being tech enthusiasts, if something were to happen to me, would my family know what to do to extract the data, to get to the data? And I wonder if there's a way to like do like there's a term for it. I can't remember what it's called, like a dead man switch or whatever. When
well, there's like living wills, there's wills. It's funny you mentioned that because I'm in the middle of like legacy planning. And because you don't want to do legacy planning when you're like in the hospital. You want to do it when you're healthy and sound mind. So I gave my wife an Excel spreadsheet with a lot of notes about account info, term life insurance info, and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of easy for her. That's kind of like a halfway point until we lock it in with like a will, a lawyer, and more official things. But
well, I mean, things
like
I
have a notepad like with or a note with like master passwords and stuff for password managers and all that.
Okay.
In my fireproof box, like safe thing. So like if something happens to me, Nessa can just open up the safe and get to my thing, right? Because I have a lot of accounts that affect both of us and would affect her in the future. Be kind of nice, as a nice thing on the way out is to not lock her out of everything.
Where do you store, like, I'm not where you store the key, obviously, but like, is this key secured in a safe place, like where she would know, and it's fireproof key?
Yeah.
Like.
Yep.
Cool.
It is
another.
It's a safe.
You can
a
store a lot
key,
of.
but the safe also has like a keypad.
Oh, perfect. Because that was the thing, is because disaster
both.
recovery, you lose that key, and then it's like a pain after that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it has both. So.
Was it Bill? You're gonna say?
You could also use a Bitwarden has a function in it where if you do like the family plan, you can set it up to where I believe like providing you provide a death certificate, they'll release the password manager to the designated person in the family. So like my wife, for instance, she would have access to that in the event of something untimely happening to me. But you can put a document like inside of Bitwarden as a note saying like, hey, if you've read this, I'm not here anymore. This is what you need to do. Here are the instructions to ensure that you're able to function electronically after I'm not here. That's a nice way to protect that data. And Joe, for what you're talking about with the church, I've put Synology NAS units in at churches before, specifically for that, to help them, kind of digitize their libraries a little bit.
Yeah.
And sometimes what they'll do is they'll keep like an external drive at the bank or in a fire safe office or the fireproof safe. Sometimes they'll like if they have a partner parish, they'll offsite there, that sort of thing. So and the nice way about doing that is you can make that content library very easily accessible to the members of the church.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The other thing too is like, so I have a lot of nerdy things going on here at my house. So I have, obviously my server, my MB server. That's obviously not a critical thing, but then I also have Home Assistant that's running, and if I were to just poof, not be here, actually you could shut Home Assistant down, everything would still work just because of the way I have it set up. It's not, you just wouldn't have automation, but some things wouldn't work, like my virtual three-way switches and whatnot. So it makes me think, how do you like pass that torch on, or is it maybe kind of is it a digital sandcastle that's just going to have to come down at some point?
It's a good question.
I guess it depends on your partner and who's going to inherit it. Do they want to inherit and maintain it? And if so, how can you treat it like more like a product that you can really make it easy for them? If not, some of them might not even want the headache. They just want to go back to manual again.
Probably have to leave it in a.
For how to sell it on eBay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the resale value of that gets difficult. Like if your place of residence is sold, I actually run into this a lot with residential client. Well, not so much anymore. We don't really do residential, but we would get calls from new homeowners saying, "Hey, I just bought this house from this, another person, and they listed you as the technical contact of who helped run the network or the automation here. You're going to have to be our tech support 24/7." And we tell them, no way. You can put in whatever system you want, but that technically was set up for that one owner. We're not doing that again.
Yeah.
Leave your stuff in a spot and put it in your will where it is, so they know where to find it. I mean, that's about the only thing you can do, isn't it?
Or have a cool self-destruct button and everything gets wiped.
That's the Inspector Gadget method.
Well, I was thinking like Star Trek Search for Spock kind of self-destruct method, but I think yours is probably smarter. Well, that was such a great discussion. I had something else in the notes here, but we can put that on for next week. So we will go ahead and move on for what's going on next week. So thank you, everyone. That was great. I'd like to pick that up again. I think there's a lot more that we could just hash out there. But next week we have Distro Exploration. So Eris, you did a straw poll on the Distro Exploration. So this will hopefully alleviate some of the pain of picking a distro. I haven't looked yet. What was the verdict on the voting there?
So the voting changed a lot from throughout the week. The last few moments. But here are the results. Number one is Linux Mint, 21%. Number two is Fedora Silverblue, 17%. Then is OpenSUSE Micro OS, 17%. Then it's Linux Lite, 11%. PCLinux, 10%. Tiny Micro Core Linux, 10%. Tux Penguin, 7%.
Nice.
Blend OS, 4%. Flatpak Remix, 4%.
Well, it looks like Linux Mint got it, by 2 votes. 2 votes. This is why you have to vote early and vote often, right?
And Instant OS got nothing.
Well, that's what happens, I guess.
I don't think many people have heard of that, the distro. That might have been something of a factor.
Well, very cool. That answers that. So how does everybody feel about Linux Mint that's on here? Because there's that vote, and then there's the vote of the panel of people who actually will dig into it. I know a new Linux Mint just came out, if I'm not mistaken.
I was the one that initially mentioned Instant OS, but that's okay. Linux Mint, I have actually, I just don't have the latest version of it.
I haven't tried it in a while. It might be good to try it again. I think finding a good like entry level OS, I think is something I still need to. I search for from time to time, and I'm wondering if Mint might have re-secured that position.
Definitely up there. As much as I don't like it, it's definitely a solid first recommendation.
Yeah. Well,
I will be traveling for the next few weeks, so I will not have an opportunity to try out the new version of Mint.
but you can still badger, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. As long as you can still badger, then that's totally cool.
Just point and laugh because they're
Yeah.
running Mint.
The day that I'm not badgering is when you do want to tell my wife that I'm on my final.
No.
It throws. Yeah.
So
Hey, you need to check
We
on
won't think
Bill.
those
He's
thoughts.
been really nice to me lately. There's might be something wrong.
He's been nice. He's not well. I do that. What the guys at the office know that if I'm super happy and chipper, they try to send me home. They're like, he's not well.
Just have a certain expectation for you, huh? Well, all right. I guess unless there's any objections from the panel, and you feel free to speak up. There is no reason why you shouldn't speak up.
I have one funny story for the day that I'd like to share that I think some of you will really appreciate, especially you, Nate.
Okay. I love funny
So
stories.
my dear friend Neil,
Mhm.
who everybody knows, came over today, and
Oh,
we decided that. So Neil wrote up, and we had an idea in mind, and we were going to get my little Dell Optiplex mini PC running with some really cool emulators and RetroArch and some Sega Genesis stuff. We were just going to
nice.
have fun this afternoon, and then maybe for Sudo show we were going to mess around with a little bit of content, doing like a single node OpenShift cluster. Well, that's supposedly very hard. That's not easy stuff to do. You need specialized and high-powered machine equipment to do that. Long story short, we spent 6 hours trying to make a Genesis emulator work and about 30 minutes getting OpenShift up and running. We did not succeed in getting the Genesis emulator working.
That is fantastic.
Neil started digging into who wrote this? Wait, why did this? No, this is not supposed to be. No, give me that. I'm going to have to submit a patch for this. Why is this missing in Fedora? And I said, well, from Neil, from what I heard, if you want to do emulation the right way, you have to do it in Ubuntu. And I just kind of left him to stew over that for a little bit. And needless to say, he got annoyed, fed up. We ate some barbecue, had some ice cream, and then he has since left. So the easy thing that was supposed to be super easy, just install RetroArch, it kind of works, right? No, that was a 6-hour ordeal. And then OpenShift, which is supposedly an ethereal thing that only DevOps wizards know, and me, the old school VMware guy VM guy would never be able to understand, got it working in about 30 minutes. So I thought
hilarious.
The twilight zone of technology is hit today, if for all of you out there that are into retro gaming.
So have you ever tried the Sega CD emulator? Have you gotten that to work?
We haven't gotten that far. We're just trying to get the
Sonic.
Genesis emulators to work with the 6-button controllers, and it was like, no, right is down and C is up, and like all the mappings are way off, even though inside of the distros it was fine. And we went to all these strange distros and Laka OS, and that didn't work, and then this didn't work, and this one wouldn't map NFS, and this one's menu was horrid. So it's means I have some homework to do while I'm traveling.
Sounds like sounds like fun. And also, Dan Simmons says that sounds about like how it goes for me too, Bill. So
Yeah.
Apparently you're in good company. So the simple things, I bet what would happen, Bill, if you found like a random 12-year-old out there and says, "Can you figure it out?" He'd probably get it in like 5 minutes, and you're just holding it wrong is probably the problem.
You're not wrong.
So just a quick to circle back for just a moment. So Sean Gold, he says, so is it going to be the Ubuntu based Linux Mint or the Debian based Linux Mint? Decision. So the answer to that is whatever you want to do. I think I had forgotten there was a Debian based Linux Mint. I might try that one just because. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, the Debian base doesn't release as frequent as the Ubuntu base, though.
I think they
Okay.
did come out with the Bullseye version, so I think they have something.
I'll look at them both
newer.
and see which one's newest, and I'll just grab that. I'll probably Ubuntu, but I really want to try the Debian just because.
This
So the
Penny is a
Ubuntu
few years
base-
old. Oh, go on.
The Ubuntu base is based on the long-term support of Ubuntu. The 2204 would it be, or the 2004 still? Probably 2204 now, I would say. Yeah. So their point releases, all 3 point releases will be based on that long-term support.
Okay. Well,
Something.
This is from a few years ago, but when I tried Debian Mint, it seemed to not be well fleshed out, whereas the Ubuntu base, that seems to be, the one that they put
The
all the
main
effort
product.
into and has all the features and so on. So yeah,
Well-
if you're trying Mint, you want the real Mint experience, I think it's got to be the Ubuntu one.
I have to say though, like I kind of like having a train wreck
True.
experience from time to time. So it just
Train wreck.
it's just for me that's fun because like it's I run a distro that doesn't have issues mostly, and so it's kind of fun to have have a distro experience where you have to think some problems through. Although that's really counterindicative to like why I'd want to try Mint. So maybe I've lost the plot. So
Well, the Debian, it's pretty well polished. You don't even think you're at Debian when you use it.
well, I think Debian's great, like on the MX Linux. I think Debian just feels a little more bare bones to me, and I like that about
Yeah.
Debian. So
That's true.
Yeah, the Debian edition definitely is not a lot of difference when you're looking at them face to face. The only difference is you'll have probably an older kernel, older applications as well, whereas the Ubuntu base will be more up to speed and probably a lot easier to install NVIDIA as well.
Okay.
Mint
'cause I
was
have a-
really useful when I was new because it gave me this kind of buffet of all the things that might be nice for a new user to have. And I remember when I tried out Mint on Debian, I found myself installing the things that I had seen on the Ubuntu version of Mint to get it to be something that I really liked again. So those are the early days.
If you have any suggestions, please send them to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com, whether it's distributions, applications, ideas for discussions, poll ideas. That's a new one. If you have any ideas for polls that we should do, send a email, or you can hit me up on any of the Telegram. What's that one that the gamers like? Discord.
Discord.
I lost my head there for a bit. Anywhere that you see Cubicle Nate, fire off a suggestion. I will gladly put that on a list. Also,
the forums.
the forums, absolutely, the Tux Digital forums. Check those out as well. Anywhere. But you can send them to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com. I like emails. Emails are fun for me because it's easy for me to manage. It's a little bit older school, but hey, who doesn't like email? Also, there's a Linux Saloon calendar. We had a change last week due to reasons, and that's so I updated it in the calendar and so forth. So the calendar is a great tool for me to communicate for those of you that are interested in knowing when the shows are and if they get shifted a little bit left to the right or if they get canceled due to things. So Linux Saloon calendar at linuxsaloon.com or cubiclenate.com/linuxsaloon, however you want to get there. One's just a redirect that I don't really have totally good. So there we go. Also,
just wanted to say
yes.
Oh yeah, go on.
Go ahead. No. What are you gonna say?
No, I was just reading somebody in the comments. Sean Gould said with things like Flatpak, Snap images, what software ships with a distro's package manager is becoming less of a compelling factor, which is true.
Yeah, I think so too.
So
I think it's gonna be that application experience right out of the gate, which with Ubuntu. Now, by the way, with Ubuntu not enabling Flatpak or whatever right out of the gate. Linux user space, they had a great discussion. I think it was a live discussion that we had. Wait, no. I think it was the last episode where they had a great talk about why they don't and whether they're centering around snaps. And I was actually kind of like, boo on you, Ubuntu, for not having Flatpak enabled by default. But then after here last Monday, Leo said last Monday, hey, all these days kind of run together, Leo. So anyway, but after hearing Dan and Leo discuss the reason for why they don't ship Flatpak by default, because they're concerned about the application experience right out of the gate. It actually makes a lot of sense, and I've now actually kind of mostly changed my mind on that in that whole discussion. So because like if Ubuntu has everything with like the Snap Store, they have some sort of a quality control aspect of it, then that does actually affect your new user experience as well. So I don't know. Now I don't even know anymore what I think. I can't even make a decision.
Well, I get it, because I mean they're supporting that. They've got a lot of distros underneath them, and they're supporting snaps. So if they put Flatpaks in there, their main thing is snaps. So if somebody's installing Flatpaks and having a problem, then the problem's going to come back and look bad on Ubuntu. I could sort of get that, to be honest. So their main support profile is snaps, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I get that. Although I like Flatpaks.
Yeah, I like them too. So, but I can understand that from a from a quality control standpoint and new user experience and all these things. That makes a lot of sense now.
And that was actually an option we had for distros, the Flatpak Remix.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is just Ubuntu with Flatpak enabled.
Right, but the other thing too is like the since there isn't that quality control on Flatpak, it's kind of in many ways it's a little bit like the Wild Wild West. Not really that wild. It's not AUR. It's not quite AUR. So maybe it's just wild, not wild. So it's the Wild West. It could be a roll the dice experience for
but they're changing that, right? They're changing that because they're putting a certified. I think they're putting. I've seen somebody talking about they're putting a little icon next to the Flatpaks that come from the actual developers or
blue check mark of sorts.
Blue check mark. That's the one. Yes. So you can see if it's genuinely from those people, then it's going to be authentic, pretty much. I think that's.
Do you have to pay $8 a month for that, or?
No, but they're looking at putting Flatpak behind a paywall, not a paywall. Sorry, they're looking at putting something in place to support developers on Flatpak. Is that correct? I think I've seen that somewhere.
So.
Yeah.
Dan also says that the new FlatHub page is up as of today, so we'll have to check that out as well. I'm not going to turn it out because I don't want to get distracted. Well, very cool. So we have a few minutes left for our. Wait, let me make sure I'm not skipping anything. Hold on, one moment. All right, we're good. Eris, am I missing anything? Oh, I
don't think so.
I do blatherings about the show after the fact. I didn't do it last time because I ran out of time, but sometimes on CubeLate.com I'll do a blathering about the show after the fact. Like when I go through the show, watch it all again, and I kind of cut it down. I like to, any other thoughts or comments or like
in
after
retrospective.
Show discussion. In retrospective, I suppose, yes. So I usually blather about it like a day or so after the show comes out. Well, alrighty. Okay, now it's time for a community free pour. So, Ben, are you still here, Ben? Or do you take off on me?
I think he's gone.
Oh. Well.
That's Ben.
He jumped out on me. So he was going to talk about StormOS and something interesting relating to the themes. But apparently...
layouts. He was talking about... so I'll try and mention a few things he was saying before the show. He was talking about how to make it look a bit different because currently he's got a top panel with a bottom dock, and I think he's using the XFCE dock.
Okay.
Can't remember the name of that dock. And it looks a bit Mac-like, and he's trying to think of ideas to not make it look Mac-like, make it look different to what everyone else does. But I was saying to him, there's not a lot of options with XFCE, but there is a little tool within XFCE for layouts. He did tell me the name of it, can't remember now. But I told him, why don't you just make up a few different layouts and get the user to choose upon installation. I don't know, first boot, something like that. But
and the other thing too is, there's only so many currently desktop layout paradigms that exist. And I think no matter what, you're not going to make everybody happy. So probably, I would say, just thinking about this, giving options is good. or just one solid option with maybe pointing to some other options or some other ways of doing it. You know, like I know he's using XFCE, but if he were using Plasma, you could, in the global themes, you could actually have pre-installed a few different global themes that you could select one default, and then maybe some sort of welcome screen that says, hey, you know, with a link to that part of the settings or whatnot, and then have some other themes, you know, preloaded in there, and, you know, some sort of feedback mechanism so that people can give feedback as to what they like. But also, I think, didn't Mate for a while have a really great? They had like the three basic, you know, the Windows style, the Mac
quite
style,
a few
and they
layouts.
had one other. Yeah,
They have like 6 or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So, but I think must be a little bit more flexible than XFCE. I think the Mate desktop.
I think XFCE is pretty
because-
flexible though, like in general.
I think he meant like the desktop switcher.
Oh,
was more
okay.
robust.
Gotcha. That could be,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There's a way you could do that in XFCE, but the thing that Mate has a lot of different menus. So you can have like
Yes.
you can have like your basic menu that everybody has with the search button, and Mate also has the one with the computer and your files or whatever, like the old GNOME 2, and it has like 3 menus, I think. So there's a lot of options there. The XFCE can replicate, but you can replicate like the layout of the panels. There is a program, I don't know exactly what it's called. I know Ubuntu has it, where you could save your layout
that's
of
right.
all the panels.
It does. Ben told me it before the show started. I can't remember what it was called now. It's called something, but there is a layout tool for XFCE where you can, you know, make your different layouts. I think what you do is you set up the layouts and then you save it with that tool. So but the options, like you mentioned, I mean, in Mate, you've got, like Aris said, 3 different menus. You've got a full screen menu as well, option as well, and you have the heads up display. I think it has that as well. So there's so many options you have. I don't think XFCE has that many options.
Yeah.
And that's I think what I was getting at before, but I'm not sure about that one. I'm not sure if that's a tough one to try and implement and try and come up with something completely different. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that
The
took a
only
lot of TLC for him to do that Martin did.
The only one I've seen, I think, was I think it was Voyager. I think many years ago they had like these invisible menus. I think on the desktop somewhere. I think it was Voyager.
Voyager has a nice tool that you can change. They have like dozens of themes for like Plank and just other themes altogether. It's Voyager Backs, I believe it's called.
Okay. And I think that's the other thing Ben didn't want to use was Plank, I think he said. But there is an
Plank's pretty customizable. I mean, you get a lot of themes in that if stealing them from someone else, but you can customize the spacing to make it look maybe more Google Chromebook like. I've done it. I did a video on it a couple of years ago. It's just going into one of the setting layouts and changing stuff, and you can do quite a bit with Plank actually. But then there's also Cairo Doc too that you can use, which is pretty functional.
Yeah, true.
There's a lot of options to it.
Steve did a GNOME desktop on XFCE. I remember quite a long time ago. That was pretty cool.
Peppermint, yeah. Oh, the look and feel, yeah. That's how it eventually evolved.
Plank is a dead project, I think, right? It hasn't been updated in a long time.
Plank has?
I don't think it has.
I couldn't tell you. Well, it is that time, and Eris, thanks for making me laugh just a little bit ago. So I read it's closing time and therefore last call, and you put little musical notes in the show notes. So thanks for that little ha. I appreciate that. So Steve, tomorrow, are you doing a show in the morning?
I'm planning to.
Oh, good.
Well, I got it set up, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I hope you do. I like watching your shows in the morning while I'm, doing things. So I appreciate that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
do you have any topics for tomorrow, or is it a free flow?
Let's see, just a couple of things I did. Wednesday, I did a stream using the browser-based platform EVMux. And I installed DistroBox on Peppermint.
And
I'm still, I got
Distroboxing still.
yeah. With a little bit of Adam's help this morning, I was able to fix. I got an Ubuntu container, Ubuntu 2204 container going, and installed OBS 29 on Peppermint on Debian.
Excellent.
Bingo.
Did you need that for something? Did you, Steve, the 29 version? Is that the reason why you did that?
I guess without going too long. So last week I talked about like the difference between, like, say, the deb package or your native packaging, the flat pack, and the snap, and just using OBS as an example. And the flat pack is very, very functional, very good. But I have incorporated the Tuna plugin to play music, background music on my stream. Well, you can't do that in the flat pack because it will not see VLC, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's kind of difficult for them to package what they need to have the flat pack read VLC.
Even with like flat seal tweaking, you can't get it to.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No.
Can't do that either. Wow.
No, you won't see with the flat pack OBS. You will not see VLC source. So and since I could not do it, but now it's part of my mainstream. And the whole idea is just like to go to different, to have a couple of backup distros and have fun. Just maybe streaming a little bit different, but importing all my stuff over from each OBS and that, and seeing if it's possible, like using containers and doing it on a system that to be able, because it will be an Ubuntu based OBS running on a Debian system through the container.
Did you export the app so it's like integrated in your menu yet, or no?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I had problems too. I think maybe because I had the OBS Snap before. It was so I forget, and what we it was like trying to read it in the old Snap folder. So once I removed Snap in the folder, I was able to export it. But it was a relatively easy process to get Docker and DistroBox installed. I'm surprised I did it.
That's cool. And tomorrow we'll get updates and all that, and hopefully Adam will join you and derail you. That's my goal. That he somehow derails you.
That's his goal. That's
whatever.
his goal.
That's
well, I'm gonna do it.
I mean, that's what I'm always counting on. I'm just someone to just totally derail you off your plan. Anyway, which is probably why I don't make hard plans anymore. But that's the fun of the stream. Mark, I haven't really pestered you enough. When you joined, I didn't properly introduce you. So Mark, now that I'm introducing you, welcome to the stream. Also,
Thank you.
What do you got going on tomorrow?
The Atlanta Linux enthusiasts are meeting. We meet every Sunday from 3 to 6 U.S. Eastern. And it is a general help session. People can join and ask for help. We use Jitsi, and you can share your screen and show, command line you're working or some application, and then we try to help.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed being on there the past few weeks. Everybody there is very helpful and friendly, and it's just really nice. And also it gives me a chance to see Jitsi in use. And so I appreciate everybody that's on that particular stream.
Oh, thank you. Well, and I know some of the other folks on this on Linux Saloon have joined from time to time. I do thank you. Any input's valuable, and we try to be helpful. We do try to be very consistent with every Sunday, so that people can come back and get help when they need it. And maybe this Sunday doesn't work out, but another Sunday does. So you can find out more information at l.org. And we also have a meetup page. But yeah, so thanks a lot.
Well, I really enjoy it when I'm able to join. Good times. And very knowledgeable people, like super knowledgeable. All right,
Yeah,
cool.
very much so.
So check out the latest Linux User Space podcast. I think there's only one left this season, if I remember correctly. But the episode 319, You Got Moxie Kid, was very good, and it really, I think, changed my mind quite a bit on the whole Flatpak snaps issue. So that's, I think when they provide such great arguments and very well thought out ideas, that's it can do that. So I'm not as close minded and biased as I thought I was. I guess that's what I learned.
Okay. I
Yeah.
really like them as well. Listening, I have that podcast on Antenna Pod anyway, so it was good hearing what they had to say.
For sure. And anyway, there's a lot of other topics too. Check it out. But yeah, linuxuserspace.show. So check that out. It's good stuff. And I think it was that episode they said something nice about me, which is really, really surprising. I don't know if it was Leo or Dan who they said something that was about Linux Saloon that they thought that was a great podcast. So super nice of them. Much appreciated. I enjoy the show. It's one of my faves. Although I have lots of faves, it's one of my faves. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to plug? I know, Colin, you're probably on hiatus right now, making videos. You said because of your move and things are crazy.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to do anything yet. So, like I said, I'm just trying to figure out which way the channel's going at this point. So, yeah, other things to do. So, life's in the way at this point. I may get a chance to make some videos, but I've got a few things to do with the new home and all those sorts of things. So, I want to get all that out of the way first.
I know, Bill, you are on Sudo's show. You had a great discussion the last show about, I think it was about like fleet deployments of desktop computers or computers in general. And that one I thought was a very fascinating discussion. Although I'd say about 70% of it went over my head. Maybe
Mine too.
No. So anyway, I thought it was a great discussion about like maybe where Linux, desktop Linux is lacking. I think never the year of the Linux desktop, I think was the name of the episode.
Never the year of the Linux desktop. And actually, I'll give you all a sneak peek into the next Sudo Show episode where we continue that discussion and the application development environment inside of Linux, like writing applications for Linux and how that works.
Packaging too. It's crazy.
Well,
Yep.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to that. I have lately I have some longer drives, so it's been fun catching up on a lot of podcasts because I just haven't had the ability to. So it's we'll see when that fun wears out.
Likewise for you on Linux Out Loud, you guys, you, Wendy, and Matt are my commuting colleagues when I'm going from place to place.
Yeah,
Yes.
I listened to well, I have to edit right now because Wendy's away. And somebody forgot to contact Bill this last week, so I apologize for that. So what are you doing this week, Bill?
I will be traveling to Arizona on Wednesday.
Okay.
And I will be there. I'm going to be traveling for the next few weeks. I'm away from home for about 3 weeks. If you do need me, not this week, but the week after, I could probably jump in because this week is vacation week for this part of the trip. So
gotcha. So your time is planned out. But speaking
unless you did Monday night, that's the only option.
I think
if you wanted to do Monday, if Monday night works for you guys, I can do. I know it's tight, but if you wanted to do that, I could make that work.
Okay. Well, I'll keep in mind, and I'll try and plan better this time. So, but speaking of Linux Out Loud, Wendy's away because she's doing this robotics championship thing. It's called. I can't remember what it's called. But she's doing that, and so it's just Matt and I, and so it's an episode about everything Wendy doesn't care about, and I'm editing that now. Coming up is when Wendy's away, those two goobers will play, I guess is what maybe it should be called. I have a website called cubiclenate.com. I do things on there, but before I go any further, does anybody else have anything they want to talk about, like plug something before I go on? I know.
In the Zoom chat, Prophetic left a message before he had to depart, and one that I thought was rather important.
Oh, okay. So I have to head out. If someone could share my last word, remember, everyone here can contribute to a project with documentation. Even if you can't code, you can clean up documentation, etc. And I totally agree. Even I can do that, and that's about that's mostly what I do with OpenSUSE. Anything like if there's documentation that you use and you can see some improvements, fire away and do some help. That's a great way to contribute, and I think that's an excellent last word. Thank you, Prophetic.
Yeah, that was cool.
I think Ulfnick, I want to say thank you again for all the work you do on the forums. It's much appreciated. I know that I need to say I totally lost my train of thought. I appreciate what you do on there. And
yeah, privilege. You guys do all the work. I just I drive around Tux Digital with my arm out the window. That's how I like to describe it.
Perfect. Somebody's got to do it. You get a tan on one arm and not on the other. I like it.
Yeah, there you go.
The farmer tan.
The Tux Digital Farmer Tan. It's the best. All right, I want to thank you all for your support, however you do it, being a part of the conversation in both this Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, as well as everyone who watches the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved for making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back in a personal computer. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yas.
Right.
Bye, Nate.
Bye. See you later.
Bye.
Gotcha on the flip side.
Then hit our open up. Wow. Then.
Yes,
Is that still
that's his
that's still
primary.
continuing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
continuing.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
Okay. So he's just he's jumped on board of this scholarship again. Is that right? With IT.
You're breaking up on me, Colin. Sorry.
Maybe he's not ready. I just put him on the spot. Or maybe somebody else knows.
Well, I heard.
The second poll was, we'll go with that one last, I guess. The
Or was it somebody else? I can't remember now. I can't hear you, Adam, if you're talking.
I'm
So
curious. Go ahead, Colin.
No, go on. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask.
Interesting.
I think you need to leave it.
I could be
I mean,
mistaken.
I'm cool with it. I was the one.
21.1.
Well, if you have any suggestions, whoops, don't worry about that.